tonight is the in-season tournament semifinals in Las Vegas. Let's check in with our favorite each week, Sam Amick from The Athletic, joining us. Sam, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Jay. I'm doing great, my friend.
Yeah,
good to be with you.
Good to be with you as well. I'm glad you're joining us. Carmichael Dave a little under the weather today, so he'll be back with us and you next week. Are you in Las Vegas for the tournament?
I am in Las Vegas for the tournament.
Okay. Your thoughts just in general so far, how we got here and what you expect tonight?
Should be interesting. It's very strange having covered the league a long time like yourself to have something new, where you're figuring out logistics. I come in yesterday and it's like, all right, T-Mobile Arena, where is that? Which casino is it attached to? And you get in there and the freshness of it, I think, is hitting everybody. And it, honestly, from a media standpoint, we go yesterday, they have 4 consecutive practices and then media sessions with the 4 teams. And it seemed like the energy was kind of shared with players too. Guys come in and they found it really, really strange and odd, but in a good way. I don't know, I'm sure you saw the clip, but Giannis, it was his birthday yesterday and he's joking about how he's going to tell his kids that he had, it's the only time he had his birthday in Vegas. And they had a cake for him. They sang out on mid-court. Guys are talking about this unique experience, talking about how it's funny because I know they all make a lot of money, but they're legitimately excited about trying to win $500,000. So it's kind of different from all angles.
Yeah, the buy-in on the player level has, I think, been great, and I think people underestimated how much the competitive drive would get them. And what I'm trying to figure out, Sam, if the competitive drive is as much for certainly that extra cash, but being the first one to do this, do you think year 2, year 3, and so on has as much sizzle, or is this something that's gonna, we have to kind of wait and see on that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair concern. I was a little surprised yesterday to the money question that you had such candor from players about not only trying to win this prize, but imploring the league to increase the prize in the future. Just being honest, I don't think that probably lands that well with the fans, but but money does talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I told somebody yesterday, it reminds me, the worst case scenario reminds me of the Elam ending when the NBA went to that in the All-Star game some years ago. And if you remember, when they did it in Chicago for the first time, it was a hit. And the All-Star game was back, and it was exciting, and the players were bought in. And then it fizzled out big time. You know what I mean? And now they're having to make other changes to make the All-Star game entertaining. So I think that's a concern. But I also just think it's good old-fashioned competition. And that might be the thing that means it doesn't fizzle out. It's actually, whether it's the trophy or just being able to say that they won, a lot of the guys did really, really genuinely talk about how, listen, there's a reason that there's only around 450 NBA players. These guys are maniacs when it comes to competition. And they'd rather win and have a good time in Vegas than be on the regular schedule.
Yeah, part of me wonders, I think it's been successful, and I'm sure there'll be tweaks, whether that's, I don't know what the tweaks will be, but part of me wonders, Sam, if it needs to be longer or an extended time, maybe 2 different sessions. And my point being is, let's take the Kings, for example. It was a spirited game, Monday, intense. Well, they got knocked out, and that's fine. That's a reality, and not everybody's going to win this thing. But Friday already feels a little different, going to Phoenix and playing, and now there's still a very meaningful regular season they have to worry about, but there's a drop-off already, and it's only December. I don't know what the league's counter to that is. Maybe they do this in, like they just had that run-through of playing 2 games and 2 games at home, 2 on the road in that group setting. Maybe there's a second session in January to extend this. I don't know what the league is thinking about, and maybe they don't have to tweak a thing, but have you heard about any tweaks regarding this?
Yeah, I think tweaks are definitely coming. I don't know which ones. In fact, shameless plug today on the Athletic NBA Show podcast that'll be out later today or tomorrow. We're having a guy named Evan Wash on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Who is one of the architects. He's the VP of basketball strategy and analytics for the NBA. And while he wouldn't say this, he's kind of widely known as if you're giving credit to one person, which it was a group effort, but Evan had as much to do with this thing happening as anybody. And so I'm dying to ask him some of these questions. I think that, to me, the idea of having more in-season tournament games would be on the table, and that might eliminate the point differential problem that they had before, where you have 4 games. You inevitably are going to have a bunch of teams that are either 4-0 or 3-1, and then the point differential thing just got really, really messy. Chatter yesterday about, I don't think this is a next year thing, but I would be surprised if, I don't think it's in Vegas in perpetuity. I think it's probably going to change locations at some point. So stuff like that. And they were open from the beginning when they came up with this idea that it was going to be a work in progress and the changes were going to be part of it.
Interesting. I actually think there is a charm just to winner goes to Vegas. There's a nice ring to that, whether that's a good one or not. That's interesting on a potential change of venues. Where are you thinking, like home sites or where else?
I don't know. I mean, the only city that was kind of mentioned yesterday was Miami. And if we're being honest, it's like whatever the player power ranking list might look like, like it's where do players want to go?
Makes sense.
This is a if you want player buy-in, you have to do things that make players happy. And so, we'll see. There was a little pushback on that idea. I think people want to see how, Vegas looks for the first couple of years. But, again, I think change is going to be part of it for sure.
As far as the teams that are left, I mean, I think the league's got to be, relatively pleased here. You got some new faces. You got some consistent names that we know. Certainly having the Lakers there, which I would think of the 4 teams and location, that's going to be the team that's represented the most tonight. But there's always a lot of eyes and attention to the Lakers. It feels to me, Sam, that LeBron really wants this. Are you getting that same kind of vibe?
I am, but I think Tyrese Halliburton really wants it. Yeah. I think I'm trying to think of who else was having that kind of energy. I think that the Pelicans, who the Kings just learned the hard way, how they're a pretty motivated group right now. They're kind of relishing in that we're a small market team that nobody talks about nationally, like the Kings, but they seem to be pretty locked in at the moment. But yeah, LeBron, it's just amazing to me. I know we run out of ways to talk about it, but to see him coming up on his 39th birthday, do what he did the other night against the Suns, when you're talking about Kevin Durant, Devin Booker on the other side, I looked it up, that line that he had, and I'm forgetting the exact numbers now. It's like 26, 11, and 5, or in that neighborhood. It was only the second time in his incredible career that he's had that particular line or more, mainly because of the steals. He had 5 steals. And it's just like, how could he do something new at this stage? And so, but to your question, yeah, I think he knows it's going to be Laker Nation like crazy in Vegas. I think the game tonight is going to be, LeBron fan club and Laker fans everywhere. It's going to be crazy. I'm really curious to see, as we talk about the league trying to have this project be successful. I feel like this afternoon's game, might be a flop, if I'm being honest.
In what way?
The game could be good, but if you talk, Jay, you're talking about 2 p.m. Pacific time.
Yeah.
So ratings, I cannot imagine being very good. And then the early feedback in Vegas in terms of crowd is that, first of all, Bucks and Pacers, like how many Indiana and Milwaukee fans are getting on a plane and coming out here? I had one of our colleagues who covers the Bucks was telling me that we have a mutual friend who is about as passionate a Bucks fan as you could possibly imagine, and he's also filthy rich. And he was telling him that he can't pull it off, that he wants to come, but it's just middle of the week and it's 2 p.m. and it's just too short notice. So the crowd, I think, will be interesting to watch in the first game. There were even rumors of and this is, I guess, a little loose speculation, but like deals where you could buy 1 ticket and get 3 free. Wow. I think they're they're probably working pretty hard to fill those seats today.
Yeah, is there an answer? I saw when that came out before. It wasn't a Pacers Bucks thing. It was this game was slated to start at 2, no matter who was there. Why? Because even let's take a typical TNT or a national night. That East Coast game would start our time 4:00, maybe 4:30. This one's 2. I don't. Is there a rationale behind this?
I don't have the schedule in front of me. You might know it because you're talking all sports on the show, but like it has been mentioned that they're just afraid of the NFL and that they're when is kickoff? Of today's game, what time would that be?
Well, it's going to be around 5:00. But also, if I tell you the game, I mean, it's the Patriots and the Steelers.
That's right.
It's not even a good game.
I knew that part. Right. Yeah, but it's the
NFL though.
Like NFL rating. I mean, it's still going to kill. Yeah. The Patriots Bucks game. That's the only explanation I can kind of gravitate towards. But we talk about the possible changes. I don't know. Like, can you do one semifinal game one day and another, one night and the other the next night? I'm sure, then it's a little inequitable because one of the teams is going to have one fewer day of rest heading into the championship. I don't know what the solution is, but I feel pretty confident that 2 p.m. on a Thursday is probably not it.
Has there been any, to your knowledge, Sam, any pushback at all on? I did like that the games counted as regular season games. Anybody thinking it should be its own entity or separate than that?
Not hearing that as much as, frustration with the uncertainty of the schedule and what it does to a lot of teams. But what's interesting is you have teams that are, that are like, it's like found money because they actually got lucky and like their schedule got better because they lost in the in-season tournament. And then you have teams that got, for lack of a better way of putting it, got screwed. Like the Houston Rockets come to mind. This is a potential scenario that didn't happen, but still I think makes the point. Like if they had advanced in the tournament, the way their schedule was set up, there was a scenario that existed where they would have been on the road for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And so from a packing standpoint, from a logistical standpoint, that would have been a nightmare. You've got, the details are escaping me, but like the Knicks, I think, feel like they got the short end of the stick here. You have stuff where it's like, all right, you lose in the in-season tournament, and now instead of playing against teams like the Bucks and the Pacers and the Lakers and Pelicans, you have 2 lower level teams that, your record just got better for the regular season because of who you're playing. Now, the Kings, I don't think are in that camp because they're playing Phoenix. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, you could argue. I have 2 examples for you on this, Sam, because I think it hits home really for the Kings. So their reward is they advance, but they played a team in New Orleans. I mean, it should be tough, but that's a team they've had trouble with and they ultimately lost. And then they get Phoenix, who they're going to play now for a 5th time, where conversely, a team in their pool that's been really good, a nice surprise story is Minnesota, who went 3-1, but because of point differential didn't advance. So here they are with the best record in the league, and their 2 extra games they were added on this week, they got the 2 worst teams in the West. They got Memphis and San Antonio. They already beat San Antonio last night. I'm guessing they'll beat Memphis. And now they're going to get out of this. Yeah, they didn't make it to Vegas, but they'll likely be the best record at 17-4 when the week's over.
Yeah, that's tough. And I mean, to steal a line from Pelicans coach Willie Green, because I had asked him the other day just about if the tournament did not exist, like the idea that teams are sleepwalking through December. He goes, listen, I hear you, but I would not agree with that. He goes, our team knows as well as any, but the Pelicans lost in the play-in last year. And if they get one more win on, every win matters, So yeah, the Timberwolves, I mean, that could be the difference between them getting the 1 or 2 seed.
Sure.
Vice versa for a lot of these teams. I don't know the answer. The reality is if you're going to do something like an in-season tournament, you're not ever going to iron out all those wrinkles. You're going to have to, you can improve it, but you're going to have to reach a point where everybody like essentially says, listen, we are adding X amount of revenue to the pot by doing this. And that is going to come with a certain level of just get over whatever the consequences are.
Yeah. We're talking with Sam Amick from The Athletic. He's in Vegas tonight. Today. It's the in-season tournament. You've got the semis. The teams did return to action yesterday, Sam. I saw that the Clippers won again. They had another matchup with the Nuggets. I think it's their third already this year. But here they are at 10-10. We were kind of poking at them at first when they couldn't win a game at all with James Harden. Now it looks like they're finding a little bit of a groove. What do you make of the Clippers now through 20 games?
Yeah, I mean, very interesting. I talked to James Harden recently about how he saw the whole situation, and he felt like they had a long runway. They were going to have time, but they don't have that much time. The West is tough, and you can't really fall behind. I have, generally speaking, not been a believer, but and I'm talking about them being title contenders. They're talented. They do appear to be figuring it out somewhat. It helps that Joker shot, 9 of 32 or whatever he was last night. Had a kind of a rare off shooting night. But they're long. They can defend like crazy. They do some offense for defense stuff with Harden and Westbrook, where Russ is, has actually kind of gone back to his pretty strong defensive ways, when he locks in. So I don't know. They're interesting, but one of the things I had talked to James about and PJ Tucker, who's on that team, is that if you look at super teams or attempted super teams, it's typically, and I'm stealing this kind of perspective from Clippers coach Ty Lue, usually it's two guards and a big, or two wings and a big. You have Kevin Garnett in Boston, Chris Bosh in Miami, Kevin Love in Cleveland. Point being, the bigs are typically the ones that end up sacrificing, and then the wings dominate. And this is such a different formula when you talk about having, 4, wings or guards. And it makes it hard. PJ had a quote that I put in the story that kind of captured it perfectly. He said, "There's not enough basketballs on the planet for this team." But they have had some good moments, and they obviously have a lot of talent.
Yeah, for sure. And again, getting them to 10-10 here at 20 games. We're basically a quarter of the way through. And with it not feeling like there is an elite team, I feel like there's a lot of really good teams. As we get closer to February and the trade deadline, we've already heard some rumors of names like Zach LaVine and a few others out there. Do you anticipate this being a really active year in a sense that, hey, if Team X adds one more player, they might be able to elevate themselves to the top of one of these conferences? Do you feel we're going to have a busy trade deadline?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't know, where it's going to come from yet. We focus a lot on Chicago and Toronto. The Zach LaVine injury is, I kind of wonder how that impacts things because he's been on the market. I wrote about DeMar DeRozan recently. I'd be shocked if he wasn't moved somewhere. Toronto's got, OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam and a bunch of other guys that could be available. So, but your premise, I think, is on point because I would certainly call the Nuggets elite, and I think them losing Jamal Murray for a while and getting him back recently, the Nuggets are elite, but they also, if you say, is it like the Warriors back in the day when teams just kind of, they were paralyzed by fear? No, that's not the case with Denver. So if you think you have a good core, if the Kings are in this group, honestly, if you think you have a good core, but you look around and say, we're definitely not going to be elite unless we improve the roster, then you're probably going to work the phones like crazy. And I do find the Kings really interesting because from one, you mentioned the Pelicans matchups. It's like, my goodness, it's tough to have 3 L's from the same team this early, but those games also exposed the Kings' lack of size. And, I think that is probably going to be a focal point as they look at the market. I think it'll be pretty active for sure. Yeah,
I think for Monty McNair, West, that whole front office, they're in a really interesting spot, Sam, because I think they're good. I think good is a nice, safe spot to say the Sacramento Kings are in. Now, good doesn't generally win you a championship unless you get just a boatload of breaks. So to get to that next level, it does feel like they need a talent upgrade. But they also watched a bunch of teams last year make some moves at the deadline that necessarily on talent, but didn't parlay them into wins. I'm speaking of like Dallas at the time last year that went backwards. Now they're better off this year. So I think the Kings are in that spot. I don't know how you feel. Like they're good. They'll win a lot of games, but if they want to get to that great part that Mike Brown talks about, and I'm sure that Monty talks about, I really feel like they need to make a move. It's just that right move. They have to pull the trigger on that. I don't know what that is.
No, I'm with you, and I think they know that. I wish I had the story in front of me. When we had an off-season piece on the Kings and had a long interview with Monty McNair, in that story, one of the most revealing statements he made was essentially like really candidly saying that the reason they felt good about their plan and their summer and their off season was that they had an opportunity to look at what they had and to add a little bit to it, the Vezenkov addition, things like that, getting Barnes back, locking up Sabonis. They could look at it, but then from a flexibility standpoint, they were very well positioned when you talk about draft assets and contracts to be active on the trade market. And if you take what Monty said in the summer and you look at the results right now, then to me, in terms of a 2 + 2 = 4, logic, I would expect them to be very active because I don't think they have been good enough for them to say, you know what, this is evolving and growing and developing internally in the way that makes us feel like we're going to be title contenders. I just don't see it right now.
What do you think their best asset that they own is right now? Draft picks, or I know they certainly De'Aaron, Sabonis, but I don't think that's who they're looking to move.
Those guys are not going anywhere.
Yeah,
it's the draft assets, and I don't have the whole cupboard in front of me as far as what they have, but certainly the ability to access multiple first rounders, pick swaps, things of that nature. They've got darn everything in front of them. Contract wise, listen, the guy that you're going to get the most calls on that I also don't think is going anywhere is Keegan Murray.
Yeah.
But that's somebody who, I guess because we all know in pro sports, never say never. Like if a star's name crossed their desk or a really, really good player, we were shocked when they traded Halliburton, but I don't think Keegan's going anywhere. There's going to be a lot of interest there. Barnes' contract, even though he's not playing all that well, is pretty palatable. And, I think as far as a money filler, he's a guy that could, be part of something. And then Kevin Huerter comes to mind. And I, admittedly, because I'm there all the time and I've enjoyed Kevin in terms of covering him, you end up feeling bad because he's like this. He is this little bit of a, the guy who gets picked on with this team where he plays well and everybody loves him again. And then he doesn't play well, and it's his fault, and he should be on the move. But I do think, as far as just guys that will come up in conversations, he's certainly got value as well.
Yeah, I think you hit on two guys. Like I think Barnes gets picked on a bit. Certainly Herter does. I think Davion, based on where he is, and maybe an opportunity that's not happening as much here. But that's not how it's not how it always works. Hey, can you trade these guys and get that all-star in return? That's not the way this really works.
Yeah, the Davion one certainly could be on the move. It's just, the value is gone in the wrong direction recently.
Yeah.
But all it takes is, somebody else to have a different vision for a player than what we're seeing on the court right now. But yeah, to your question, I think it's the draft stuff that look at Toronto, for example. If they decided to finally pivot and actually rebuild, Scotty Barnes obviously is the center of what they're doing. Then those picks would come in handy, or a team like that. So it'll be, I think it'll be active for sure.
Well, I know you're going to enjoy your time there in Vegas. You there for the whole thing through Saturday?
I am. It's weird, man. I'll be honest. It's so weird to be out here in the winter.
Yeah.
Yesterday after the practices, because of the awful tragedy over at UNLV, the traffic was a disaster. So I decided to, this kind of speaks to the weather. I decided to just go ahead and walk from the arena to my hotel. It was almost 2 miles, and I'm walking and I'm sitting there going, this is so bizarre. I had a sweatshirt on in Las Vegas and I'm not roasting, and it's pretty comfortable. And, it's not what we're used to. This is typically mid-July, 110 degrees outside, watching a bunch of lower level players do their thing. Having the stars out here in the wintertime is something different.
Well, we're going to enjoy your coverage, Sam. We always enjoy having you on. We look forward to talking to you next Thursday as well. Sam, be good, and we appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Jay. Be good, brother.
All right, thank you. That is Sam Amick coming